The Galactic Council had seen many things in its 40,000-year history. They had witnessed the rise and fall of empires, negotiated peace between species that communicated through interpretive bioluminescent dance versus aggressive pheromone emissions, and once had to mediate a dispute where both parties insisted the other side had started a war by existing too loudly. Yes, the Council had truly seen it all. Or so they thought. According to YouTube analytics, 99.3% of viewers are not subscribed. That's a huge number. By subscribing the channel that is completely free, you'll help support the channel and never miss fresh content. Until they met humanity. And more specifically, until they met Marcus Chen, who is currently standing in the central deliberation chamber of the most powerful governing body in known space, wearing flannel pajama pants, decorated with cartoon dinosaurs riding skateboards. A t-shirt that read, "I'm not arguing, I'm just explaining why I'm right." And holding a coffee mug that stated, "Mornings are for contemplating the void." The mug was empty. This would become relevant later. "Let me get this straight," Marcus said, taking a slow sip of absolutely nothing from his empty mug while maintaining aggressive eye contact with High Commander Zixthor of the Vraxian Empire. "You want me, a random software developer from Seattle who was literally just trying to vacation on Alpha Centauri 4, to babysit the galaxy's most dangerous predator cubs because, quote, the human seems unbothered by death," unquote? Zixthor, who stood at an impressive 9 feet tall, covered in ceremonial battle armor that had been blessed by 17 different war priests and was rumored to be able to withstand a direct hit from a plasma cannon, shifted uncomfortably. His mandibles clicked nervously, a sound that his translators helpfully rendered as anxious humming. "That is an oversimplification of the situation," Zixthor began, his 3 eyes refusing to meet Marcus's decidedly unimpressed stare. "Oh, good. Please, complicate it for me. I have nowhere to be, except literally anywhere else." The council chamber, a massive spherical room that floated in a pocket dimension, accessible only through 17 different security checkpoints, each guarded by species specifically bred for warfare and intimidation, somehow felt smaller under Marcus's sarcastic scrutiny. The assembled representatives from 473 species, many of whom had evolved past the concept of fear itself, all found very interesting things to look at on their data pads. Ambassador Trilix of the Crystalline Concordat, a being of pure silicon-based consciousness inhabiting a matrix of carefully arranged gemstones, chimed in with what their translators rendered as a sound like wind chimes being thrown down a staircase. "The situation is dire, human Marcus. The Krothak cubs, currently housed in our maximum security xenobiological facility, have, in the past standard cycle, killed 17 of our finest handlers, escaped containment 6 times, and somehow ordered 4,000 credits worth of live prey animals to the facility using the station commander's personal account. They're 8 weeks old," added Council Liaison Morpheus, a floating jellyfish-like entity from the methane seas of Titan, who sounded tired in every language simultaneously. Marcus blinked. 8 weeks old, and they have your entire military baffled? "Yes," Morpheus admitted, somehow looking even more deflated despite lacking a skeletal structure. "And you think I can handle them because you're human," Zixthor said, as if this explained everything. Marcus took another defiant sip of his empty coffee, maintaining eye contact. "You're going to need to give me more than casual species profiling." The High Commander pulled up a holographic display, which flickered through various scenes of violence and chaos that would have sent most beings screaming for therapy. Marcus watched with the detached interest of someone who had spent too much time on Earth's internet in the early 21st century. Nothing surprised him anymore. Somewhere along the evolutionary path, humanity had collectively broken its fear response and replaced it with memes. 2 months ago, Zixthor explained, a Krothak breeding pair were discovered on the outer rim. The Krothak, as you may know, I don't, are the apex predators of the Andromeda sector. A fully grown Krothak stands 15 feet at the shoulder, has claws that can rend starship hull plating, and possesses a bite force that can crush a combat mech. They are also, due to several unfortunate extinction events on their homeworld, critically endangered. The breeding pair we found was the first confirmed living pair in 3 centuries. Let me guess, Marcus said, examining his fingernails with exaggerated boredom. They had babies, then died. And now you're stuck with murder puppies you can't euthanize because of conservation laws. The silence that followed was deafening. That's exactly what happened, Morpheus said quietly. Called it. Marcus finally lowered his empty mug. So why me? I code for a living. My most dangerous skill is deploying updates on a Friday afternoon. Zixthor looked physically pained, which was impressive considering his species had evolved past physical pain 2 millennia ago through sheer determination and spite. We have observed human behavior across multiple scenarios. Humans are death worlders. Sure, Earth is technically classified as a Class 12 death world. We've been over this. No, you misunderstand. It's not that you come from a dangerous planet. It's that you're all absolutely insane. Zixthor pulled up more data, which scrolled past at dizzying speed. This data we've collected shows humans casually approaching megafauna on their homeworld to, and I quote, pet the danger dog. You've domesticated hundreds of species, many of which actively tried to kill you during the process. You have members of your species who voluntarily choose to live with apex predators and claim they're misunderstood. You have people who free climb sheer rock, faces with no safety equipment for fun. And perhaps most damning, when your species encounters something that could easily kill you, your first response is reportedly to ask if you can boop its snoot. Marcus considered this. Okay, but to be fair, most snoots are very boopable. You're proving my point. Zixthor's mandibles clicked rapidly, signaling extreme agitation. Every other species in this galaxy encounters an apex predator and has the reasonable, logical, survival-oriented response of fear and avoidance. Humans encounter an apex predator and experience what you call cuteness aggression and attempt to befriend it. Have you considered, Marcus said slowly, that maybe you're all just cowards? The chamber erupted into chaos. Representatives from species that had conquered star systems before humanity had discovered fire were shouting in 1,700 different languages. Somewhere, an alarm went off. Morpheus looked like they wanted to evaporate. Zixthor's voice cut through the noise like a plasma blade. The Cubs killed 3 Vraxian shock troopers yesterday. These are soldiers who have survived campaigns against the Hive Mind Collective. The Cubs did this while playing. Skill issue, Marcus said with a straight face. I beg your pardon? Look, I'll be real with you. This sounds like a you problem that you're trying to make a me problem. Marcus set down his empty mug on the most expensive piece of conference furniture in the known universe, leaving no coaster. Several representatives gasped. What's in it for me? We'll pay you 1 million credits. Not interested. 5 million. Nope. 10 million and full diplomatic immunity across all council space. Marcus paused. Keep going. Unlimited vacation time, a personal spacecraft, and... Zixthor looked physically ill. A formal apology from the council for the incident. What incident? The one where we initially classified humans as a Category 7 invasive species and tried to quarantine your entire solar system. Yeah, that was messed up, Marcus agreed. Tell you what, I'll do it for all of that plus one condition. Name it. I do this my way. No guards hovering over me, no protocols, no military intervention. Just me and the cubs. You give me full authority over their care, and everyone else stays out. The council chamber fell silent. This was possibly the worst idea any of them had ever heard. It was also, unfortunately, the only idea they had left. Agreed, Zixthor said, sounding like he was signing his own execution order. Great. I'm going to need my luggage from my hotel, a bigger coffee mug, and someone to explain to me what these things actually eat, because I assume it's not dinosaur-themed cereal, though I'm not ruling it out. The xenobiological containment facility was exactly what Marcus expected. Sterile, cold, and designed by people who had clearly never considered that making a prison look less like a prison might help with the whole inmates trying to escape constantly problem. He arrived in his pajama pants because, as he explained to the 3 heavily armed guards escorting him, if I'm about to die, I'm going to die comfortable. The guards, who were each wearing enough armor to supply a small army and carrying weapons that could vaporize a building, did not find this reassuring. The cubs are through this door, one guard said. Their voice filtered through a helmet designed to survive atmospheric re-entry. We've sedated them for your safety. You've what now? Marcus's casual demeanor evaporated. Standard protocol. They're too dangerous to approach while conscious. Marcus pinched the bridge of his nose. Okay, new rule. Nobody sedates the cubs anymore. Like ever. Jesus Christ, no wonder they keep trying to murder everyone. You're literally drugging babies. But they're dangerous. They're 8 weeks old. Their babies having a completely reasonable response to being imprisoned and drugged by aliens. Marcus pushed past the guards, who were too stunned to stop him. Where are they? Cell Block 7, maximum security. Marcus was already jogging down the hallway, his dinosaur-themed pajamas flapping behind him heroically. The guards scrambled to follow, various alarms began blaring, and somewhere a supervisor was definitely having a panic attack. He found the cubs in what could only be described as a steel box. No toys, no comfortable bedding, just cold metal and fluorescent lighting that would make anyone want to commit violence. And there, huddled together in the corner, sedated and trembling, were 2 of the most pathetic-looking creatures Marcus had ever seen. They looked like someone had tried to design a tiger, a bear, and a dragon in one creature, gotten confused halfway through, and just added more teeth and scales to cover the inconsistencies. They were roughly the size of golden retrievers, covered in midnight blue fur with bioluminescent stripes that pulsed weakly, and they had small horn nubs just beginning to emerge from their skulls. They were also absolutely terrified. Open this door right now, Marcus said quietly. Sir, that's against every protocol. Open. The door. Or I walk, you lose your 10 million credits. And you get to explain to the Galactic Council why the galaxy's most endangered species went extinct on your watch. Because you refused to listen to the expert you hired. The door opened. Marcus walked in, sat down on the cold floor, and just waited. The guards watched from behind reinforced transparent aluminum, probably already planning their own funerals. It took 20 minutes for the sedatives to wear off enough for the cubs to notice him. When they did, they responded exactly as expected. The larger one, which Marcus mentally dubbed Blue because of their darker fur, immediately positioned themselves between Marcus and the smaller one, who he decided to call Violet for similar creative reasons. Blue's lips curled back, revealing teeth that were absolutely going to be horrifying in a few months, but currently just made them look like a puppy who hadn't grown into their mouth yet. A low growl rumbled from their chest, which the facility's translators helpfully didn't translate because killing intent is universal. "Hey there," Marcus said softly, not moving. "Rough day?" Blue growled louder. Violet peeked around their sibling, eyes wide and reflecting the harsh lights. "Yeah, I bet. This place sucks. The lighting is terrible, there's no climate control, and I'm pretty sure that corner smells like fear and regret." Marcus slowly pulled something from his pajama pants pocket. "Want a snack?" It was a protein bar from Earth. Not particularly fancy, just a basic chocolate chip flavor that Marcus had packed for his vacation. He carefully unwrapped it, broke off a piece, and set it on the floor between them. Blue's growling stopped. Both cubs stared at the food with confusion that transcended species. "It's not poisoned," Marcus said. "Though it does have soy lecithin, which I guess might be poison depending on who you ask on the internet." He took a bite of the remaining bar himself. "See? Totally safe. Probably." Blue approached cautiously, sniffed the piece of protein bar with deep suspicion, then looked back at Marcus with an expression that clearly translated to, "What the hell is this?" "It's human food. We're not supposed to share it with animals, but you're sapient according to the files, so I think this is fine legally." Marcus broke off another piece. "Plus, you're probably starving because I doubt anyone here knows what you actually eat." This was apparently the correct thing to say, because Blue carefully picked up the protein bar piece and ate it. Their eyes widened. They made a sound that the translators rendered as surprised appreciation. "Right, the chocolate chips really make it." Marcus broke off more pieces, this time rolling them gently across the floor. Violet emerged fully from behind Blue and grabbed one. And that was how the most dangerous predator cubs in the galaxy were defeated, with processed human food and basic respect. 3 days later, the facility's surveillance footage showed something that made every xenobiologist in the Council database question their degrees. Marcus Chen, still wearing his dinosaur pajamas because they're comfortable and I'm making a point, was lying on the floor of the containment cell, which he had personally redecorated with blankets, pillows, and what appeared to be plush toys he had somehow acquired. Both Krothak cubs were sleeping on top of him, purring with a sound like distant thunder. Blue, the larger cub, was sprawled across Marcus's chest, one massive paw resting on the human's face. Violet was curled up against his side, their tail wrapped around his arm. Marcus was snoring. Outside the cell, Zixthor and Morpheus watched in horrified fascination. "He's been in there for 3 days," Morpheus said, quietly. "He hasn't left except to get more food and supplies. The cubs haven't attacked him once," Zixthor added, his voice full of disbelief. "Not even when he accidentally stepped on Blue's tail yesterday." Blue licked him. Yes. Blue, who disemboweled a combat drone last week, licked the human who stepped on their tail. They watched as Marcus shifted in his sleep, accidentally disturbing Violet, who made a small chirping sound of complaint. Marcus, without waking up, mumbled something that the translators couldn't parse and patted the cub gently. Violet settled back down, content. "What is he doing differently?" Zixthor demanded. "We had the finest handlers in the galaxy working with these creatures." "I pulled the logs," Morpheus said, pulling up a data pad. "Your finest handlers were following proper xenobiological containment protocols. Minimal contact, sterile environment, scheduled feeding times with appropriate nutritional paste. That's correct procedure." Marcus threw out all the protocols on day 1. He brought in blankets, plays music from his homeworld, talks to them constantly, and has been feeding them a mixture of their proper food and what he calls people food as treats. That's completely inappropriate. It's working. Zixthor couldn't argue with that. In the 3 days since Marcus had taken over, there had been 0 escape attempts, 0 injuries, and 0 murder attempts. The cubs, according to all biometric readings, were healthier and calmer than they had been since arriving at the facility. It was, by all objective measures, a complete success. It was also completely insane. Yesterday, Morpheus continued, I watched him give them a bath using soap from Earth. He sang to them. What did he sing? The translators identified it as a cultural artifact called the wheels on the bus. I don't know what that means. Neither do I. But the cubs loved it. Blue tried to sing along. They watched the human and cubs sleep for a few more moments in contemplative silence. We're going to have to rewrite every protocol in the xenobiological database, aren't we? Zixthor said finally. Yes. And admit that humans were right about the power of, how did Marcus phrase it? Just being cool to animals. Also yes. Zixthor made a sound like a sigh filtered through 17 different kinds of regret. This is going to be so embarrassing. Week 2 of the experiment, as the council had started calling it, brought new developments. Marcus had requested and received permission to take the cubs outside the containment cell. This had required approximately 47 different security meetings, 17 risk assessments, and one very heated argument where Marcus had pointed out that, "You literally hired me to do this, so either trust me or admit you wasted everyone's time." They were currently in one of the facility's biodomes, a large environmental simulation designed to provide enrichment for various species. It was currently configured to match the cubs' presumed natural habitat. A forest environment with running water, varied terrain, and plenty of space. Blue and Violet were experiencing grass for the first time in their lives. It was adorable. Blue kept pouncing on individual blades of grass like they were mortal enemies, while Violet had discovered that running through the shallow stream made satisfying splashing sounds and was exploiting this discovery for all it was worth. Marcus sat on a rock, drinking coffee from his new larger mug. This one read, "I survived first contact, and all I got was this stupid mug." Watching the cubs play with the satisfaction of someone who was absolutely going to say, "I told you so," at the next council meeting. "Human Marcus," called a voice from the biodome entrance. He turned to see Ambassador Trilix approaching, their crystalline structure refracting the artificial sunlight into dancing rainbows. "Ambassador, come to check on the murder babies?" "I have come to admit you were correct," Trilix said, which was apparently very difficult for a species that communicated through mathematically perfect tones. "And to apologize." "Oh, this is going to be good. Hold on." Marcus pulled out his personal datapad. "I'm recording this for posterity. Your species is insufferable. That's been noted in several council reports. Yes, please continue." Trilix chimed in what the translators rendered as embarrassed resignation. "We approached this situation from a position of fear and control. We saw dangerous predators and responded with containment and force. You saw frightened children and responded with compassion. The results speak for themselves." As if on cue, Violet bounded over to Marcus, chirped happily, and dropped a stick at his feet. "She wants you to throw it," Trilix observed. "Yeah, we've been working on fetch. She's getting pretty good." Marcus threw the stick. Violet raced after it with enthusiasm that would have seemed less threatening if she wasn't the size of a motorcycle and had claws that could rend steel. "The thing is, Ambassador," They're not that different from Earth predators at this age. Sure, they're bigger and have more teeth. But fundamentally, they're babies. They need socialization, play, boundaries, and affection. Your protocols treated them like biological weapons. My approach treated them like kids. Turns out, kids respond better to kindness than imprisonment. But they are dangerous. So are human children, if you give them enough time and access to markers. Marcus watched Blue attempt to climb a tree and fail spectacularly. The danger isn't inherent. It's about how they're raised. You can create a monster by treating something like a monster. Or you can raise a functional member of society by treating them with respect. This wisdom comes from your experience with Earth predators? Nah, this wisdom comes from being a middle school teacher for 2 years before I switched careers. Same, principles apply. Be consistent, be fair, don't be a jerk. And for the love of God, don't sedate people when they're being annoying. Trilix processed this. You were an educator? Briefly. Turns out I like computers more than I like explaining why you can't divide by 0 to students who are actively trying to divide by 0 out of spite. Marcus finished his coffee. But I learned that most behavior problems are actually environment problems. The kids acting out weren't bad kids. They were kids in bad situations responding logically to their circumstances. You're saying we created the behavior problems with the cubs. I'm saying you took 2 orphaned babies, threw them in a metal box, pumped them full of sedatives, and had armed soldiers as their only interaction with other living beings. Then were shocked, when they responded with fear and aggression. Marcus stood up as both cubs ran over to him, engaged in some kind of game that involved trying to knock each other over. Any species would respond badly to that. These 2 just happened to have the physical capabilities to do something about it. Violet headbutted Marcus's leg affectionately, nearly knocking him over. And now look at them, Marcus continued, scratching behind Violet's emerging horns. 3 weeks of basic decency and they're normal, happy kids. Still apex predators who could absolutely kill everyone in this facility if they wanted to, sure. But they don't want to because they're not scared anymore. What will happen when they reach maturity? Trilix asked. They will be even more dangerous. Then we'll deal with it when we get there. Maybe we find them a proper habitat. Maybe we establish a breeding program with proper socialization protocols. Maybe we teach them to read and they become productive members of society. Wouldn't that be something? Krothak delegates at the Galactic Council. That's absurd. Why? You've got a floating jellyfish, a sentient crystal, and a guy whose species evolved from space-faring bacteria. The Council's already weird. What's 2 more? Trilix chimed with what might have been laughter. The Council will never agree to that. The Council agreed to let me babysit them in my pajamas. At this point, nothing's off the table. Month 3 brought complications. Blue had entered what Marcus diplomatically called the terrible 2s, but with more teeth and property damage. This manifested in Blue deciding that doors were optional, walls were suggestions, and the concept of inside voice was for species who hadn't evolved apex predator status. Violet, meanwhile, had discovered that they could make lights flicker by directing their bioelectric abilities at the facility's power systems, and thought this was the funniest thing in the galaxy. Marcus, wearing pajamas that now read, "I survived raising Krothak cubs, and all I got was this and several scars," was beginning to understand why the previous handlers had struggled. "Blue, we've talked about this," Marcus said patiently as he surveyed what used to be his sleeping quarters. The cubs had their own room now, connected to his by a door that Blue had apparently decided was more of a suggestion than a barrier. Doors are for using, not destroying. Blue, now the size of a small car and absolutely magnificent in their terrible behavior, looked at the splintered remains of the door, then at Marcus, then back at the door. They made a sound that the translators interpreted as unrepentant acknowledgement. That's not an apology. Blue headbutted Marcus affectionately, nearly breaking several ribs. Yeah, love you too, you walking natural disaster. Marcus surveyed the damage. This is the third door this week. At this rate, the facility is just going to be one big open floor plan. Violet bounded in, the lights flickering in their wake, carrying what appeared to be someone's datapad. Where did you get that? Marcus asked. Violet chirped innocently. Violet, buddy, we've talked about stealing. That's someone's property. Violet set down the datapad and pushed it toward Marcus with one massive paw, their bioluminescent stripes pulsing with what he had learned to recognize as pride. Marcus picked up the datapad and immediately dropped it. Oh no. Oh, this is bad. The datapad belonged to High Commander Zixthor, and Violet had somehow managed to access his personal files, navigate to his photo gallery, and send every single image to the entire facility staff. Most of the images were of Zixthor's collection of decorative plants. The High Commander, it turned out, was an avid gardener. Okay, new rule, Marcus said, sitting down heavily on what used to be his bed, before Blue had decided it made better nesting material. We need to have a serious talk about boundaries and cybersecurity. Both cubs sat in front of him, attentive in the way that suggested they were absolutely going to ignore everything he was about to say. I know you're bored. I get it. This facility sucks. Your species is supposed to have dozens of square miles to roam. And instead, you're cooped up in here with just me and my questionable life choices for company. Marcus rubbed his face. But we've got to work together here. Blue, that means not destroying every door you encounter. Violet, that means not hacking the station's systems, even if it is objectively hilarious. Blue yawned, displaying teeth that were now legitimately terrifying. Are you even listening? Blue flopped over onto their side with a dramatic huff. Yeah, that's what I thought. Marcus stood up. Okay, new plan. If you two can go one full week without property destruction or cyber crimes, I'll talk to the council about getting you access to the main biodome permanently. The big one, with actual space to run. Both cubs perked up immediately. But, Marcus held up a finger, and this is important, you have to actually behave. That means following the rules we've established. No breaking things, no stealing, no using your abilities to mess with station systems. Deal? Blue and Violet looked at each other, seemed to have an entire conversation through expressions that Marcus couldn't quite interpret, then both made sounds of agreement. Great, I'm trusting you too. Marcus headed toward what remained of his door. Also, we're getting you proper enrichment toys because clearly the current situation isn't cutting it. He made it 3 steps before both cubs pounced on him in what had become their standard expression of affection, knocking him over and then lying on top of him while purring loud enough to vibrate his internal organs. Can't breathe? Marcus wheezed. This is how I die. Suffocated by affection from endangered murder cats. Neither cub moved. You're lucky you're cute. The council convened an emergency session after the datapad incident. Not because of the security breach, though that was concerning, but because High Commander Zixthor's plant photos had somehow become the most popular content on the Galactic net, and he was both mortified and secretly pleased. The human needs to maintain better control over the cubs, argued Representative Clicks from the Hive Mind Collective, a species that had never met a problem they couldn't solve with more rules. The human has done more with these cubs in 3 months than we achieved in 3 weeks, countered Morpheus. Some property damage is acceptable. Some. They've caused 16,000 credits in damages and prevented the extinction of a species while completely revolutionizing our understanding of xenobiology, Trilix added. I'd say that's a fair trade. Marcus, attending the meeting via hologram because he couldn't leave the cubs unsupervised for more than 20 minutes, chimed in from what appeared to be a supply closet. Look, they're teenagers basically. Adolescent apex predators going through growth spurts and developing their abilities. Some acting out is normal. We just need to channel that energy into something constructive. Such as? Zixthor asked. I've been thinking about that, actually. Marcus's hologram flickered as someone, probably Violet, bumped into the transmission equipment. They're smart, like really smart. Violet figured out your security systems in under an hour. Blue has spatial reasoning that lets them navigate complex environments instantly. What if we actually educated them? The council chamber fell silent. You want to teach them? Click said slowly. Why not? We've got sapience indicators. They're definitely intelligent enough, and honestly, they're bored out of their minds. A bored apex predator is a dangerous apex predator. An educated, engaged apex predator is a productive member of society. This is unprecedented, Zixthor said. So is letting a human in pajamas raise them, and look how that turned out. Marcus grinned. Besides, what's the worst that could happen? They could become more efficient at causing chaos, Clicks pointed out. Or they could become the first of their species to integrate into galactic society. Look, I'm not saying it'll be easy. But nothing about this situation has been easy, and we've made it work so far. Give me a chance to try. The council debated for 3 hours. In that time, Marcus's hologram showed him breaking up 2 separate fights, cleaning up what appeared to be a spilled container of food, and at one point just sitting against a wall while both cubs slept on him. Finally, they reached a decision. You have permission to implement an educational curriculum, Zixthor announced. But if this goes badly, it won't, Marcus said confidently. Trust me, I've got this. Narrator's note. He did not, in fact, entirely have this. Week 1 of Krothak school went about as well as could be expected, which is to say it was complete chaos with occasional moments of surprising success. Marcus had set up a learning area in one of the biodomes, complete with interactive displays, puzzle toys, and what he called practical application exercises, which was just a fancy way of saying organized mayhem. Blue took to spatial and physical challenges immediately. Given a complex 3-dimensional puzzle, they could solve it in minutes. Taught basic physics concepts, they immediately applied them to jumping higher and running faster. Violet gravitated toward anything involving patterns and systems. They figured out binary code before Marcus had even finished explaining what binary was. When introduced to basic programming concepts, Violet stared at the display for approximately 15 seconds before writing a simple script that made all the facility's doors play musical notes when opened. Okay, so you're both terrifying geniuses, Marcus said, reviewing their progress. This is fine. This is totally fine. I'm not at all concerned that you're learning faster than I can teach. Blue knocked over a structural engineering puzzle they had just completed, looked at Marcus, and made a sound that definitely translated to, "What's next?" Right, you're bored again already. Marcus pulled up his teaching plan and immediately scrapped half of it. Okay, new approach. You two clearly don't need basic concepts. Let's skip ahead to practical applications. Blue, how do you feel about material science? Blue's eyes lit up in a way that made Marcus slightly nervous. And Violet. Want to learn about cybersecurity? The ethical kind, where we protect systems instead of breaking into them? Violet's bioluminescent stripes pulsed with interest. Great, this won't backfire at all. Let's begin. Month 6 arrived with Marcus, looking significantly more tired, and the cubs looking significantly more terrifying and educated. Blue had grown to the size of a small transport vehicle and could now calculate structural load-bearing capacities by sight. They had also discovered that they enjoyed engineering and spent their free time designing theoretical structures that made the facility's actual engineers question their degrees. Violet had mastered 6 programming languages, could navigate the galactic net faster than most AIs, and had become an advocate for cybersecurity after Marcus had shown them what happened when systems weren't properly protected. They had also started wearing reading glasses that Marcus had custom-made for them, even though they didn't technically need them. They just liked how they looked. Marcus, wearing his original dinosaur pajamas, because they're vintage now and represent my journey, was giving a presentation to the Galactic Council. So, in conclusion, he said, gesturing to the holographic displays showing the cubs' progress, not only have Blue and Violet mastered the equivalent of what most species learn by early adulthood, they've also developed distinct personalities, interests, and moral frameworks. Blue has expressed interest in architecture and wants to design structures that work with natural environments instead of against them. Violet wants to work in information security and has already found and reported 3 major vulnerabilities in Council systems. They found vulnerabilities in our systems? Clicks asked, alarmed. And reported them responsibly, with detailed documentation on how to fix them. Violet takes security very seriously. Marcus pulled up more data. The point is, they're not just smart animals. They're people. Weird people with too many teeth who could absolutely kill everyone in this room. Sure, but people nonetheless. What are you proposing? Zixthor asked. I'm proposing we stop treating them as a containment problem and start treating them as citizens. Give them actual education, socialization opportunities with other species, and eventually autonomy over their own lives. That's impossible, Click said. They're too dangerous. They're only dangerous if you make them dangerous, Marcus argued. Look at the data. In 6 months, there's been 0 incidents of aggression toward anyone who treated them with respect. The only injuries have been accidents during play or training, and even those stopped once we established proper communication protocols. Trillix chimed in with what the translators rendered as thoughtful agreement. The human raises a valid point. We have sapient beings that we're treating as animals simply because they look frightening. This sets a concerning precedent. They could hurt someone, Clix insisted. So could I, Marcus said flatly. So could literally anyone in this room if they wanted to. We don't base